feels like the Palestinians there have never truly accepted the idea that any Israeli state will ever exist. And as long as that idea is not only pervasive, but in a way kind of encouraged by the international community, I feel like you're giving them enough to just keep the conflict alive. Why try to build, another state? Why try to build a city that's prosperous? Or why try to do anything when the whole goal needs to be resistance, 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 and fighting against Israel?
How many Israelis do you think accept an existence of a Palestinian state, accept the fact that Palestinians are human beings? How many Israelis are like this? Who really think it's the majority?
I mean, situations on the ground can change fast. I don't know what the current polling is. I don't think there's high polling for 2 states for either side. But historically, if you look at negotiations between Arafat, between Mahmoud Abbas, it doesn't seem like the Palestinians have ever put anything on the table saying this is what we would accept for a 2-state solution. This is the type of deal that we would accept. It's always this like reject, accept 2 years later, and then continue the conflict. Like, I don't know what the actual if I were to ask, do you know what what is it that Palestinians would want that would satisfy them for some type of final arrangement?
And what would the Israelis want?
It sounds like for Israelis, it feels like the general agreement is some kind of security arrangement that leaves them feeling comfortable in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So whether this is, I think in Taba Summit, it was like 3 military outposts or whatever, and maybe control of the airspace to be handed off over time. It looks like some form of, I think in the West Bank, they want to do land swaps in order to keep the big settlement blocks near the Green Line. I think that settlements that are deep in should just be destroyed, in my opinion. I don't know if they would go with that or not. And then some sort of limitation on the right of return, which is a big one. And then some sort of access or visitation to the Western Wall without that being heavily restricted. It feels like it's like something in that ballpark. I feel like the Israeli government, I feel like, would accept.
So why didn't he do anything about it?
They tried in Camp David. They tried with Omer.
But now they only built more settlements. That's the only thing that they really done. They built more and more settlements in order to sabotage any chance for a full partition. What Israel said is totally irrelevant. Israel under Labour, under Likud, did anything possible to prevent any chance of partition.
I agree. The explanation of the settlements, I think it was a disaster in the West Bank. I don't think nobody intelligent should...
Who should be blamed on this?
Who can be blamed for this? I mean, people that want to push settlements into the West Bank, right? I think...
It's all, we all carry this responsibility. All of us Israelis are settlers because we enabled this.
Sure, but I mean, the Israeli argument is that violence never completely stopped from the Palestinians, that Arafat was always, hungry to push another deal off and see violence erupt, in a second intifada from 2000 to 2004-05, that, there's always been this kind of like the Fedayeen mindset of like the attacks and the pressure and everything else. So, I mean, I feel like depending on what you want to pick and choose from, both sides can say, look, they messed it up. Israel kept expanding the West Bank. Palestinians kept doing terror attacks. And every time one side would kind of like control their side a little bit more, the other side would push more. And it's like this back and forth. And if it doesn't get people are looking for excuses, there's always a reason to blame somebody and then not do anything, which I feel is just really toxic.
You mentioned security. What's about the security of the Palestinian people? Who is about to guard, to protect the 3 million people of Gaza? Who is about to protect them? Who is about to protect the 3 million people of the West Bank? What about their security? They are in 100 times more danger than we Israelis. What about their security? They don't have the right for self-defense, won't they?
I mean, the issue is bad right now. I agree it's not ideal, but if you were to swap it, who do you think lives in more security? Do you think Palestinians in the West Bank living under Israeli, subjugation, or if it was Jewish people living in the West Bank living under Palestinian subjugation? If Palestinians owned Israel and the Jews were in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, do you think the situation would look the same or worse?
But we are speaking about a certain situation in which 40,000 people are slaughtered in Gaza, and the whole world speaks about the security for Israel. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. I think that the fear is that, at least historically, it made more sense that Israel was a state that was looking at enemies on all sides and is facing potential annihilation at any point in time, where its people can't go anywhere else because they felt like they've been victims of the world. How true is that narrative today? Probably not as true as it was in the 30s and 40s. Probably not as true as it was in the Six-Day War and Yom Kippur. But I mean, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Which is why I think, like I said, if we were to look at, there are more Arabs living in Israel today, like 10 times more or 100 times more than Jews living in every other Arab country combined. I think the Jewish people, I think, are understandably fearful of being a minority in a country that they're in, especially if it's run by Arab citizens. I think that's a fair fear to have. Do you think that's like a fair worry to have?
They are more than welcome to pull out from the Palestinian areas, and then they will be very safe. There will be a majority.
For sure. I was thinking in terms of like because it feels like any peace agreement that the Palestinians want to make demand like an unlimited right of return to the land of Israel. That's what it feels like. I don't think there's ever been a Palestinian delegation or a negotiator that has said that they're willing to give up some amount of right of return. So it feels like there's always like 5 to 7 million Palestinians having the right to move back into Israel proper, if any like a peace agreement is actually made.
Except of one Palestinian, and his name is Mahmoud Abbas, who said it clearly that he gives up the right of return. He gave up his dream to go back to his hometown. But why would I have the right to settle everywhere, and they don't have the right to settle everywhere in their land? Why? Because we are what?
I mean, Olmert would contest that, right? And I don't know how true it is that Abbas in 2008 accepted that he would limit the right of return. I think from Olmert's telling of the story is that he gave the number, I don't know what it was, 75,000 or 50. He gave some number, and then Abbas didn't respond. They didn't show up to draw maps or anything the next day. And then 2 years later, I mean, as happened with Arafat over and over again, Abbas says, oh, well, I would have accepted this. But by then, Olmert is out of office. I think 2010, you get Netanyahu at that point, and now you're in a whole new government, and anything you negotiated in the past is just completely off the table.
We are speaking of two different levels. You are talking about the diplomatic level, and I'm talking about basic justice, about basic equality, about basic values. And this interests me 10 times more than what Abbas declared or not. I want to live in a just state, and I don't live in a just state. I live in an apartheid state. And this will not be solved through diplomatic arrangements. It will be solved, first of all, when Israel will realize what we have done to the Palestinian people over the last 100 years. Until we realize this, we cannot get to anything. And we don't realize it. We deny it. And you really reflect all the talking points of the Israeli propaganda, which is fine. I was in your place when I was young. I believed in everything you said, until I realized that my brain was washed for years. I was told we are the David and they are the Goliath, that they want to kill us, that they were born to kill, that we are the just ones and only the just ones, that we are the ultimate victims. All those things I was told, until I started to look around and to realize that I was brainwashed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Israel are the ultimate victims. I agree. I think especially the very Zionists, the far right people played up a bit. And I think to speak to that, I mean, on October 7th, it's not like you had a bunch of Palestinians in Israel to the West Bank rise up and join in some massive third intifada. I think that's a huge achievement. I think it shows a lot to the mindset of the Palestinians living in Israel and the West Bank, that they're now all trying to kill all the Jews. I agree with that. But I mean, nothing historically in this region has ever come from some group of people just realizing a thing, right? It took commitments from Carter and Sadat to get Begin to come to the table and figure out peace with Egypt. And that only came after Israel's troubling performance of 73, right, in the Yom Kippur War. And it took the fall of the Soviet Union and the Madrid Peace Conference and talks with Jordan to finally get Israel to have peace with Jordan as well. Like, none of these things just happened spontaneously. Like, they were off the backs of either large wars or big like diplomatic efforts by leaders that were willing to stake out really brave positions. And I think that has to happen rather than expecting like a sudden change in consciousness from the entire society to change a particular thing.
So by and large, Stephen, you are comfortable with the state that the mass killing, I don't want to use the word genocide, even though there's genocidal elements who killed masses of people in Gaza, who distracted the whole Gaza Strip, who is now doing the same in Lebanon. You are comfortable with this. You really believe that it's all because of self-defense, the right for self-defense. You really believe that Israel is still the victim and the Palestinians are the evil ones. I don't know where to start even.
I mean, I'm not comfortable that it needs to change, but just paying lip service to it and saying it's a horrible state of affairs doesn't do anything. If that would have worked, then we would have seen peace between Israel and the Palestinians 24 years ago with the boss. We would have seen peace, with Arafat. We would have seen peace with the boss. We would have seen peace with the Great March of Return. It just doesn't happen. There has to be leadership that takes a brave step to change the state of affairs. And until both sides feel that impetus, that pressure, nothing is going to change. Just pointing out the situation and going, this is so bad, it hasn't done anything yet. Why would we expect it to do anything in the future?
My main complaint to you is that you look at both sides as symmetrical, and they are not. I try to explain it and trying again. We are not two symmetrical parties who are struggling over one piece of land. Long time not. We are the brutal, forceful, strong, regional state, regional superpower vis-a-vis a people who lives without any protection under the very brutal Israeli boot for decades now. And whatever he tried failed. They tried the resistance, they tried diplomacy, they tried the legal arena. Wherever they try, they have no understanding. And how do you get out of it? If you deal with both parties as equals, you get nowhere because we are not equals. There is the occupier and there is its victim. And nobody can deny it now anymore after so many years.
So Gideon feels that because Israel is the occupier and because Palestinians are the victim, the onus is on Israel to institute peace and change because it's Israel that has these people.
John, please.
Justice.
Peace will be the moment. Maybe
because it's Israel that has control over these people and their water and their electricity, and they are way, way, way more powerful. And so the idea that both parties share equal responsibility for coming to the table diplomatically to institute justice and change, Gideon says, is just not rational. It's just not fair because Israel has so much. Israel's the winner in this situation. But
what's the alternative then? Does Israel force a peace agreement upon the Palestinians? Like, I don't understand what is the alternative besides both sides coming to the table to negotiate something?
The solution is realizing that there are equitable means and draw the conclusions. The conclusion is that Israel cannot do whatever it wants only because it is stronger. The conclusion is that not everything can be solved by violence. The conclusion is that not every injustice can be solved by another war. And the conclusion is that it's time to change the mindset of Israel. Therefore, any diplomatic negotiations about the location of the border or about the outpost which we spare and the outpost which will be evacuated. First of all, I would like to see Israel realizing that it's not the only people around, and they are so far from realizing it. And therefore, it's about the international community to intervene. Also from South Africa, their wives would have never given up if not the international community intervenes, because the international community is saying apartheid will not prevail in our world. And now it's the time to do the same with the second apartheid state. You say, well, this is not yet. You say it's not yet an apartheid state. You need more time to be sure. How many years? I don't know. The Palestinians cannot wait, but you can wait. Wait another 10 years, and then we meet again. And we'll tell you, you know what? Because in a apartheid state. And then what? They weren't just accepted and continue to finance it.